Welcome back to Rekt Radio, the only show that looks at a flat market and sees a launchpad being meticulously prepared for a trip to the stratosphere. I'm Sunny, and I can feel the engines humming.
And I'm Cole, here to point out that a flatline is also what you see on a heart monitor when the patient has expired. What you call a hum, I call a deafening silence. Let's get into the news before the coroner arrives.
Never, Cole. You can't ignore the sheer amount of fuel being pumped into the global system. Did you see the latest numbers? The M2 money supply has hit another all-time high. That is pure, unadulterated rocket fuel for risk assets, my friend.
Rocket fuel? Sonny, that's not fuel, it's poison. They are flooding the entire world with confetti currency, debasing the savings of every single person on the planet. Celebrating the money supply hitting an all-time high is like cheering for the water level to rise while you're standing in a locked basement. It's not bullish. It's a sign that the traditional financial system is terminally ill and the only treatment it knows is printing more money.
Exactly. And where does that money go? It doesn't just vanish. It desperately seeks a safe harbor from the very inflation that printing creates. It looks for assets that can't be debased, assets with scarcity. That means real estate, it means gold, and most importantly, it means the hardest asset of them all, crypto. This isn't a symptom of a disease. It's the catalyst for the greatest wealth transfer in history. Every dollar they print is another reason to own Bitcoin and Ethereum.
So the investment thesis is now front-run the impending collapse of global fiat currency? That's not an investment, it's a disaster preparedness plan. You're not buying into a thriving new economy, you're buying a lifeboat off a sinking ship, and you're celebrating the fact that the ship is sinking faster. This isn't a sign of strength for crypto, it's a terrifying indictment of the world's economic health. It's like being the best-looking horse in the glue factory. It doesn't change the ultimate outcome.
It's about seeing the future and positioning yourself for it. And speaking of the future, the market is already showing us who is leading the charge into this new era. While Bitcoin is taking a healthy breather, Ethereum is stepping up and taking the lead. The innovation, the activity, the narrative, it's all happening on Ethereum right now.
Oh, here we go, the classic flippening narrative that rises from the grave every 6 months. It's not taking the lead, Sonny. It's just that the speculators got bored with one shiny object and moved on to the next. The hot money is just sloshing around the casino looking for a different table. It doesn't signify a fundamental shift.
It absolutely does. This isn't just about price. It's about a maturing ecosystem. Look at the NFT market. Everyone was so quick to declare it dead, but what are we seeing? A massive flight to quality. The junk is getting washed out, but the blue chip, historically significant assets are surging. CryptoPunks are seeing a huge revival. Why? Because in a world of infinite digital noise, the market is recognizing the irreplaceable value of true, original, provably scarce digital artifacts. This isn't a dead market. It's a market that's finally growing up and developing a sophisticated palette.
A sophisticated palette? You're pointing to a handful of pixelated faces that a few crypto millionaires are trading back and forth as evidence of a healthy market? Sonny, that's not a flight to quality, it's a bubble within a bubble. The broader NFT market is still a desolate wasteland littered with the carcasses of abandoned projects and worthless JPEGs. Celebrating the price of a CryptoPunk going up is like ignoring a citywide famine because one 5-star restaurant is still fully booked. It's a microscopic data point that is completely unrepresentative of the wider reality. The NFT market didn't mature, it collapsed, and a few collectors are now playing with the artifacts in the rubble.
It's the natural cycle of any new asset class. First comes the wild, irrational exuberance, then the crash, and then the slow, steady recognition of real, lasting value. The punk's revival is proof of that third stage. It proves that digital ownership is a powerful concept, and that assets with real historical and cultural significance will not only survive, but thrive. This is laying the groundwork for the tokenization of everything, and it starts with the market collectively agreeing on what has value.
The market is collectively agreeing that only about 0.1% of the assets ever created have any value, and the other 99.9% were a complete grift. That's not a foundation for a new economy, that's the closing argument for the prosecution. You can't build a skyscraper on a graveyard. But I know you, Sonny. You'll ignore all the warning signs if you can find one chart that tells you what you want to hear. So let's do it. Let's pull up the technicals for Bitcoin on TradingView. What are the magic beans telling us today?
I'm so glad you asked, because the chart is telling the most fascinating and frankly the most bullish story I've seen in months. I have the one-day dashboard right here. What do the oscillators say, Cole? The indicators that measure short-term momentum?
They say neutral. The market is asleep at the wheel. No momentum, nothing.
Exactly. And what about the moving averages, the big, powerful indicators that show us the underlying long-term trend?
They also say neutral. For once, your precious lagging indicators and the real-time gauges are in agreement. They agree that absolutely nothing is happening.
And what does the overall summary, combining everything, tell us?
Neutral. The entire board is neutral. It's a sea of gray. It's the most boring chart I have ever seen. It's a picture of absolute profound apathy. And that, to me, is terrifying.
Terrifying? Cole, this is the single most beautiful chart setup a bull could ask for. This is the definition of a market in perfect, serene equilibrium. There is no froth, there is no fear, there are no over-leveraged longs or panicking shorts. This is a market that has found its center of gravity at a very high altitude, calmly absorbing all the selling pressure and building an enormous base of support. A neutral reading across the board isn't apathy, it's pure, unadulterated consolidation. It is the deep, quiet breath a marathon runner takes before starting the final sprint. The market is coiling like a spring, and when a market this quiet finally moves, the trend is explosive and sustained.
You see a coiled spring, I see a corpse. A market with no buyers and no sellers isn't consolidating, it's a zombie. It has no pulse. There is no conviction in either direction. This is a sign of profound exhaustion. The bulls don't have the strength to push it higher, and the bears can't even be bothered to sell it off. It's a vacuum. This is the kind of market that can get pushed off a cliff by a single gust of wind. A neutral reading isn't a sign of strength, it's a sign that nobody cares enough to even place a bet. It's the eerie silence of a ghost town right before the tumbleweeds roll through. This isn't a Launchpad, Sonny, it's a flatline.
That's all for this episode of Rekt Radio. I see a world awash in cash looking for a home, a market that's smartly rotating into quality, and a Bitcoin chart building the most stable foundation we've ever seen. The silence is the sound of an engine being tuned for perfection. Stay bullish.
I see a financial system in its death throes, a few whales playing with shiny trinkets in a graveyard, and a market chart that has no pulse. Don't mistake silence for stability. Sometimes it's just the calm after the patient has already died. Be careful out there. You've been listening to Rekt Radio.